Everyone, welcome to Roundtable. That's what we call as Future of Leadership with a bunch of credit union leaders. I've been meaning to do this for the last couple of months, but haven't been able to pull out this group through. Firstly, thank you everyone for taking your time out to join us today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Of course.
My pleasure.
Quick introduction, everyone. So I'll start the way how I see people, not any preference. I see Anand, Hivi, Cathy, and then Sam. I'll do anti-clockwise. Who is Anand? Anand is CFO of Citadel Credit Union based out of Philadelphia. He leads finance, product strategy, and analytics out there. Followed by Hivi. Hivi is EVP of Anand. I should have just paused a bit, right?
All good.
uh, Followed by Hivi. So who is Hivi? Hivi is VP of Member Relations at Associated. Been in the credit union ecosystem for 25 years. She completes 25 years in the ecosystem today. So Hivi, that's great.
Thank you.
We've got Cathy Graham. Cathy, again, a credit union veteran in the ecosystem almost close to 3 decades. Me and Cathy, we connected I would say more than a year back, and we connected on one thing, that's leadership and development of the next line of leaders. So Cathy wants to dedicate the rest of the years in the credit union developing the next level of leadership. She's very passionate about it, coaching, advising. Cathy is EVP at Desert Financial based in Phoenix. Hi, Cathy.
Hello.
Good to have you. And lastly, one of my mentors in Hindi they call Bhaiya. So that's what I call lovingly Sam. Sam Bhaiya. So Sam is EVP at Redstone, based in Huntsville, Alabama. He is a CFO of Redstone, being in the credit union ecosystem for some time with background in finance with MBA back here, right? So that's pretty much a very quick introduction. I might have done a not good and a shady job. Guys, if I've missed out anything, please feel free to add. That's what I talk about in every single podcast. Looks like everyone is smiling, so I haven't done a horrible job, I believe. So let's then start the conversation. So the reason behind this discussion or conversation, right? Uh, Things are changing. Things are rapidly changing in terms of technology disruption to new workforce coming into the play, right? The way how leadership is to work 20 years earlier vis-a-vis now, it's very different. Gen Zs have come into the workforce, and it's very different working with them. So it's a whole new different ball game that's across all organizations, and specifically for credit unions, because we are so much employee and member centric. So hence I thought of doing a roundtable, picking everyone's brain and talking about how does the future of leadership look like. I think that's a bit timely. Let's start the conversation with a few thought-provoking questions. Maybe I'll start with Anand in that same sequence. Anand, let me ask you a question, right? If leadership in credit unions had to be redefined, right, for the next decade, what principles would you put into the core of it?
Yeah, I think that's a good start for the thought discussion here for the next decade because I mean some might even argue why the next decade, but the pace of change has accelerated so much that you probably want to say, how about next 5 years? Because then we will come back again in 5 years and we will be talking about something completely different. But let's say that for the near future is a good question to ask, and it's a difficult one to answer, but it's also a good reason for us to be thinking about it collectively. So when we think about the next decade, and when we think about the principles that we want to be thinking about in this age of rapid change, the one thing that I get reminded of is, even though the pace of change seems to be accelerating, the change itself, the notion itself, is consistent, right? So we've lived through various different generations and various different stages and forms of change, and we have managed to maintain our core while also trying to continuously evolve. So that has been done through at least one principle, which is member centricity. So I think that is one principle that I would say we would want to continue, because when you say next decade or next 5 years, the growth is, let's say, it's driven by artificial intelligence and the tools that it provides. But we've had many generations of new tools come in. We have very nicely absorbed that, and then we've continued to provide what is the commonality. So while we do the round robin for getting everybody's thoughts, my first would be that the one principle that we maintain would be member centricity.
That's very powerful.
And open to other
Yeah.
thoughts on other principles.
I
Yep.
think well said there, Anand. I think certainly we exist on the member helping member, people helping people mentality, the philosophy, right, in the credit union world. And so, the focus on member is so paramount, right? The whole industry revolves around that, and institutions that have lost that focus tend to not do that great. And I think I'll just add a couple other things. I think you brought it from a business perspective. I also feel another good attribute a leader should have, and I think it's even more important in current day and age, would be to understand and absorb diverse perspectives, right? So it's not about we figured it out, much like your previous decades where once you have a technology in focus, you continue to build upon that. Given the need for nimbleness and efficiency and need to be more quick on your feet, given the change, the scale of change, you need to be aligned with the ideas that your team can bring to you and be able to understand and effectuate that change. So I think for me that is paramount. Be able to be fast on your feet and be able to understand the ideas and be able to respect those ideas. So I think as a leader, that's very important.
Perfect.
I'll
Cathy?
chime in. By the way, I agree with what's been said so far. The thing that's popping in my mind is imperfectionism. So if you've read Hidden Potential by Adam Grant about this concept of being an imperfectionist, and I think we can't afford to be perfectionists anymore. It's just not possible to be the expert, to have all the answers, to just be that bulletproof leader anymore, but to embrace imperfectionism and in the spirit of continuously moving forward, continuously growing and learning, but to be okay to not always have all the answers.
I love you said that because I always say we can't be everything to everybody, right? So we also have to give ourselves grace and say we're doing the best we can to serve our communities. But like all of you have said, that's the basic. Human beings' needs are always going to be there. People, you get born, you grow, you go to school, whatever path you choose. So the credit union industry needs to continue serving the needs at every journey. Technology is always going to be there. It's just moving faster, but it's a tool. You still need to have the human aspect. We have 5 generations in the workplace. You have 5 generations of membership. So you want them to be able to meet them where their needs are. You can't force everybody to go to technology. If they walk into a branch, it's because they want to talk to someone. And so I always believe that everybody, it doesn't mean they don't want to use technology. It means that they just wanted to talk to someone, and we just have to be there for them regardless.
And that's legitimate, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in Arizona. It's 110 degrees. If somebody got in their car and drove to a branch, they want to talk to a human.
Yep.
On purpose. Nobody gets in their car in Arizona in August accidentally. Right. I want to talk to you. I know I can do this at home, but I need to talk to.
Good point.
Yep, yep. That's an amazing point. So very that those are really good thoughts. Moving on to the next section that I've thought about is balance, right? So Kathy, maybe let's start with you. So my question is, how do you see balance, I would say, shifting between community driven and competing against the national players? Because again, I there are two schools of thoughts. One is we are competing against the Spotify and the Netflixes of the world in terms of hyper personalization. That's a cliched word I hate to use, but still that's reality. And second, we are competing against the large banks, the fintechs, the neo banks. I hate to say not the credit unions, but at least everyone apart from that. So how do you think is the balance shifted with your vast experience, Kathy, from Citadel now to Desert? How do you think the dynamics have changed, and how is it looking like right now?
I think we have to achieve scale so that we can continue to live our mission. It's almost like a virtuous circle. You can't give what you don't have. We cannot give back to the community if we don't have financial means. And if you're going to grow, you're going to have to scale. Your growth can't be dependent on continuously having to hire more people. But how do you identify that at a certain point, the growth can happen without adding exponentially to the bottom line? But the ultimate goal is to serve the community. And so I don't see these as competing. I see them as very synergistic. But if you don't have your eye on the ball in terms of scalability and efficiency, you're not going to be around to be able to give back to the community. And so that business acumen has to come into play so that we can do the good work. That the community piece feels like, oh, we're leading with our heart. But if we don't have that scale, if we don't have that financial discipline, there won't be anything to give to the community.
Absolutely. Sam, do you want to add your two cents?
No, I think that's well said there. I think innately we are so community driven, right? And I think that's our strength as a community, right? As an industry, a credit union industry, it is be able to stay focused on our communities and of course the members we serve. But then I think given the change in the market, we have to be able to compete with those large banks that you alluded to in your opening. So the technology, the services that these large institutions offer you, those are become table stakes now. So I think for me, it's more like a hybrid model where you continue to focus on the communities and the members you serve, yet you have to be good enough to compete against these large institutions from a servicing standpoint, from a infrastructure standpoint. And so having said that, it's, continue to stay focused in the community is important because that's, if you move away from it, and I know we have some large organizations that have become more of a national, within more of a national presence. But, the staying focused in the community is important because that's how you distinguish yourself versus say, a large national bank or an international bank. What are you providing to the community? What kind of value are you adding? Because your members are part of the community. So I think for me, staying focused in the community is important. Although the game has changed now, you can be saying, well, we're a community institution, so it's okay for us not to have electronic transfer of payments, right? Um, the table stakes are different. The baseline is different now. You have to compete with the same dollar because the same community members could actually go to a large bank and bank with them. And so we're competing for the same dollars, but I think our core is still community. Our core is still be able to give back, and that's where we can distinguish ourselves from a A, B, or C bank, which is down the road.
Yep. Anand, you want to add?
Yeah, I think to me this is one of the very big questions that we need to be asking, and I see this as an opportunity. And to me, the short answer is that we have the opportunity to show our members how we can fuse the two things, both being community driven and also offering our value and experiences at scale. But even before that, I'd say the first question we have to ask is. What is the definition? And when we say community driven, we're talking about how we are even structured. Like the the credit union movement is structured based on how there is alignment, there is the singularity of stakeholders, that credit union organization is here to serve the members who are also our owners. Uh, and that is a structural, it's a regulatory support that we have, which then creates this automatic community-based organization. So that's the definition to remember in the back of my mind. And the other thing is scale, the definition of scale, which under the traditional in the traditional definitions, what we're talking about scale is that unless you are at a certain level of operating efficiency, which is driven by how big an organization it is, that you may not be able to offer the experiences and the value add that our members are expecting. Now, if those are the founding assumptions that we are starting off with, the objective then, or the opportunity, is going to be how do we fuse the two on an ongoing basis. The good news is that the backdrop that we're talking about here, the AI driven backdrop, the good news that this is bringing is we see the evidence of this around us, is that AI is dropping the barriers to entry. It is democratizing a lot of the tools that were initially only available to large scale organizations, and it's making it cheaper, and it's also making it easier to integrate even for the smaller scale organizations, which may be still focused on a smaller scale, still community, but smaller scale. And so right now, I feel like this is a really interesting spot we're in, and the way that we can take advantage of this is to be focused on that fusion, to be focused on that integration of using as many tools as we can, making our operating expenses as efficient as we can, such that we can deliver both the experiences the members want as well as the value that they want. So that's my view, and I think that's going to be an evolving kind of a pursuit.
Yep.
The only thing I would add is I think we also need to start with our employees, right? That's part of our community. So when you look at we look at three pillars. That's our community, our employees, and our members. And everything you do, every decision, every strategic decision that you make, it affects those three areas. And so if your intentions are to serve the three, I think even as you are growing, which I mentioned 25 years, I've seen this credit union grow. As long as we focus on those three, as we are budgeting and strategizing, as new technology comes, how is it affecting those three pillars? And so the decision becomes a little bit easier, because when you grow, you have to think, okay, how do I put what I gained back to the community? But first, let's start with our employees and then the members. So it's always this strategy. It's like, I think Cathy said, it's like you keep going around, but at the end, when you have a foundation and focus on certain pillars, I think all your decisions become very clear. And the technology, like Anand was saying, is to enhance what you already had intended to do, is serve those three pillars.
I love that you brought employees in because I think that's the one that maybe gets the least
Yes.
attention. We all say it, but do we measure that the way we measure what we do in the community or for members? Maybe
Yeah.
not.
I always call them our internal members. So we start with internal members. Everything that we do, we start with internal members because if you don't take care of your internal members, they can't take care of the external. So I'm a big believer in that the first thing you do is start thinking about your internal members.
I love that.
I think the employees are the foundation, right, on which we are standing. So if the
Yeah.
foundation isn't there, you could have the best members, you may do everything else better, but
Yeah.
who's there to support the members? Who's there to support the community? So absolutely.
That's a new term I learned today. Internal members. I've never thought about that. It's a new lingo. Interesting. I would ask a question starting with Hivi because one common thing that me and Hivi have is both of us are very passionate about helping kids find their first job. She's very passionate about mentoring kids, right, at multiple universities. That means we both of us have to deal with kids. I mean, I call myself as a zillennial, right? I'm not Gen Z. I'm like 3 years behind the Gen Z, but just starting off millennials. I'm the millennial with the Gen Z mindset, right? So, my question is working with Gen Z is itself something for all of us to learn because they prioritize things which we haven't prioritized for long. Work-life balance, right? So, what must I would say leaders do differently here to inspire Gen Zs, right? Both again your members as well as internal members, right? In this type of a model.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting experience. But one of the things that I love to do is I love going to high schools and colleges and tell stories, right? People relate to stories. And, my story coming from Ethiopia at the age of 17, having to figure out a lot of things. And I usually try to speak to first generation of either high school or college and really making them understand that if I can do it, you can do it. And its stories are very, very important. People love watching movies because you relate to stories. And people love reading books, or whether it's online or books, because you're finding something in that story, right? So I'm a big believer in that. Second, it's coaching is so critical. And because somebody had to take a chance on me to be an executive, right? Somebody had to, or some people had to show me the ways. So I'm a big believer in starting out early, providing apprenticeship programs in high schools, the internship programs. But internship programs should not be put them in a corner, give them some files. It is about taking them out to lunch, showing them how to dress, and investing and being intentional about what we're trying to do. If we do not show them the way, their credit unions are not an option for them most of the time. It's when we start early and show them. I started in early 20s, came from banking, didn't understand why I didn't like banking, but figured it out once I got to the credit union. So I'm a big believer in holding hands, giving them grace, but having empathy that they don't understand what we're doing. But if we don't show them, why would they come and work at a credit union? We're competing with fintechs for salaries. We're competing with banks for salaries. So having those intentions, and I mean, when I say intentions, I am setting up virtual meetings. I am having coffee. Sometimes my weekends are about reaching out to them and saying, how are you? Maybe their families don't speak English or they did not go to college. Well, let me show you even how to write a resume, financial education. So the coaching has been one of my, when I retire from the credit union industry, the one thing I want people to remember is that I spent quality time with the next generation and that I found a way to guide one or two people. And you can hear from my voice, I'm very passionate about it because I have to figure it out. If I can make their journey a little bit easier, if it's one or two people a year, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, that is so inspiring, Hebe. That's it's not easy, and not easy also from the standpoint of understanding their needs. And I think the generational divide has always been around. But I would also say that whenever we talk about Gen Z, sometimes there are not so favorable words that or adjectives used for Gen Z. But I will say that they, as controversial as it may be, they teach us a lot of great things. The things such as purpose. There's so much focus, and I have younger. I have two boys, and one is 14, and even at that age, they talk about purpose
Mm,
like it's native to them. It's not even like aspirational. There's just in there. Uh, and so they teach us
mm,
that we need to be clear about our whys, our purpose. Why do we, our reason to exist? The second thing I see in them is, and maybe I guess the controversial word that is used is lazy, right? But then there is also the equivalence with that is simplicity. They
right.
want things to just work, and they want things to be simple. Now that's it's like it's the Apple generation, right? They are used to it. They're used to the Amazon level of experience, which then for us means that we need to keep that focus on seamless integration between all channels of service, so like omni-channel integration and simplicity from a member standpoint, from an employee standpoint, the internal member standpoint, right? It is the simplicity of interdepartmental handoffs, like the business processes have to be simple and reasonable.
Mm,
That they are the ones who are really forcing us in asking questions. Why do we do this? You can't any longer just say just because we've been doing it for 20 years. And so I think those are many good things that they bring in. You talked about flexibility. This is the also part of the COVID generation where they are natively used to what we're doing here, all of the remote access and meets. They also like autonomy. So I think some of the things that we haven't done in the past, we're making them like wellness programs,
right.
opportunities for them to engage in purposeful activities like volunteer activities, and things like that that are now native, and we brought them in because of them. But then we know that all humans, we all find value in them.
No, absolutely. I think that the great points there, Evie and Anand. I think to your point, as a Gen Z or Gen Alpha, however you want to see it, I think the focus and purpose is so ubiquitous, right? It's because it's been talked about in social media and say, show me your purpose. This is what I want to work for. I don't want to work, to feed myself 3 meals a day because that's table stakes. I only got that. My dad and my mom, they've already done it. How am I doing differently? Right. So that is definitely been the focus. And I think uh, as employees, and I think I can come to the members after, but as employees, the focus on wellness is so much there, right? It's not about, are you paying me top-notch dollars, or hey, are you covering my insurance or the benefits or the bonuses? It's about wellness. Do I have the flexibility to say, you know what, I'm going to take a week off, and nobody's pinging you on the phone to say, well, where are you, right? Or nobody's looking over your shoulders to say, are you doing your job well, right? So um, the wellness aspect is there, and then I think for me, psychological safety is so important in this new generation, right? And psychological safety doesn't mean that, oh, you'll never get fired, or oh, you can ask this question around them. It's about building a culture where it is okay to ask the questions. It's okay if there are 10 people and 9 of them saying we're going to go north, the 10th person can comfortably say, no, I think, why are you going north? I think south is the way to go, right? And it takes time. It takes building that culture to be able to have offer psychological safety. So I think that's become more and more important. I mean, gone are the days when you're like, man, if I say no to my boss, it's going to be misconstrued or it won't be seen as positively, and then my promotion is going to be stopped, or I'll never grow in this organization. So that's kind of more from an employee standpoint, right? The wellness, psychological safety aspect. And then we come to our members. I think you guys have resonated the idea pretty well here, which is efficiency, right? How can I make how digital adoption? That's been big, right? When I talk about Gen Z and Alpha, the first thing comes to my mind is, they probably won't go to a branch. They'll probably need an online mobile app where they can seamlessly use, right? So the expectation is different because they go to school with iPads and they type letters with iPads, and now they're using generative AI for some of the important questions and saying, hey, why, how is it different than if I just look at the answer and copy it over? Of course, it's plagiarism, but so this is the day and age. I mean, if the answer is right there, why is the teacher asking me that question? What's wrong in just pointing to this answer, right? What are you trying to do here with me? So it's becoming harder for us to explain them why they need to do certain things the traditional way, because it's all about efficiency. It's all about how can I save time, and the digital world has become the world for them, right? And so I think there is a challenge there because there's a disconnect between um, the generation X's, Y's, and then baby boomers versus the newer generation. Their expectations of financial institutions are very different than what we have traditionally seen, and that's where the bigger question becomes brick and mortar versus focus on digital, or should there be a hybrid model? And I think we're going through that challenge right now.
I think that the disconnect can be the command and control type of leadership that was
Right.
traditional in business does not resonate.
Yeah.
This is not because I said so, or this is,
Yes.
these are the rules. If the rule doesn't make sense, then why the heck are we doing it? And I think also to understand this is not a homogenous group. None of the generations are homogenous. And I think that the broad brush strokes that we like to, oh, they are all this way, or oh, they're all that way, I think that becomes almost offensive. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
The
not
one
just
size fits all didn't work
Oh,
anymore.
right.
Yeah.
they're not homogenous. They are individuals, and
Yeah.
I just like Keely's approach of like connecting at the individual level. And I love that you said if I can connect with one or two people, that's going to be meaningful versus now I'm just going to try to pretend I know this whole group. I think that interpersonal connection is super key.
One thing, if you don't mind, I may add is also as in the credit union industry, we need to look at our benefits for this generation, because one of the things I'm finding out is as I talk to them is that, they were learning during COVID, behind closed doors, and now we're asking them to come back and sit in cubicles. So we ended up building a meditation room so that they have time when they don't have offices, and asking them is like, what is it that you need? I need to get away for 30 minutes. Okay, here's a meditation room. You can reserve it. And then the other thing is new mothers not fearful of dropping their kids off and then not having a safe space to pump milk, because by law we're required to have a space, but not really. It's just a space. We built a room, and I asked them, what is it that you need? I don't have children. So asking them and saying, what paint should I color, the paint the walls? What do you need? Do you need a fridge? Do you need a comfortable blanket? And really, those things, just little things matter to them, where maybe our age group, we were just expected to show up and figure it out. So instead of saying they're demanding or they're spoiled, as literally just understanding they just grew up in a different, era of, especially with COVID, is behind closed doors, looking at, a screen.
Alluding on to one of the generational things that Sam was talking about, that a previous generation, I'm from India, so my previous generation, my mom and dad, they solved for the problem of bringing food onto the table, right? Now, my generation, not Gen Z, but almost Gen Z, we ask questions about the bigger, broader purpose. Why do I do this, right? I mean, gone are the days where there are no opportunities. Are like the world is open. There's no dearth of opportunities. But if you want to cater to both this generation of members and employees, I think we should seriously consider all the topics that we quickly discovered right now. This is amazing, right? Uh, Moving on to one of the very near and dear ones is diversity. I mean, that's another reason because of which I started Women of Community Banking podcast, because by the way, hate the term diversity, and I hate the concept of Women's Day, because I feel we need to celebrate everyone every single day, right? So that's table stakes. So my question is, we've got HR rules, principles, everything on paper, that we need to have diverse pipelines of leadership, this and that. But maybe, Sam, let's ask you this question, right? So, how do we build leadership pipelines, right? That do not just look diverse on the paper, but they truly do shape decision making and culture. So, what are your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, so yeah, I think DEI and diversity it's been such a talked about topic, especially in this day and age. I think I'll start with saying that there have been studies done that talk about the fact that if you have uh, a diverse group of people, they come out with a better decision versus a less diverse group, right? And then the question becomes, is diversity just defined as diversity of race? And I think my answer to that is no, because to me, what is more important is diversity of thought, diversity of experience. Um, and collectively, when you think about the business challenges that we see now, uh, it's not um, it's not a textbook style a solution to any of them. It's not that, well, A leads to B and B leads to C, A implies C, right? It's not that simple. And so it's important for us to, going back to the question about building the pipelines of the future, and the way I see it is, it's not about having rigid policies or procedures from a hiring standpoint where they say check the box options about do you have diversity, what percentage of leadership makes up with diverse races or female versus males. I think it's about what are you bringing to the table, diversity of industry. Okay, you worked in a bank, now you're in a credit union, you were a software engineer, now you're working here. Um, okay, you took a sabbatical for 3 years because, you were a mother, you want to come back to the industry. All these, the differences what diversity we have from a thought, from a background standpoint adds value, right? And so I think it'll be hard for me to pinpoint that if you have A, B, and C in the playbook, you're going to win out, right? It's an evolving situation, but the mere fact that the world has become so global these days, right? And if I was talking to one of my neighbors, and her daughter is actually flying to France to study. And that concept was almost unheard of, at least when I was growing up. Like, why wouldn't you just study here? Like, what's wrong with that? But the focus there is experience, right? The focus there is to be able to understand a different perspective and kind of grow from it, right? And there have also been studies that have been done which say if you want to have good cognitive mindset, right? Your cognitive abilities need to be sharp. You need to hear diverse ideas, right? Thoughts and mingle with people from diverse backgrounds. And so I think that's where that focus is. People like to go study in France or any other place to get that exposure, right? And I think if we can get that exposure in our leadership in our organization, I think generally speaking, we'll be more nimble, we'll be more prepared uh, to answer the questions of the future and be more prepared to uh, uh, take head on the challenges of the future.
Sounds good.
I think it's a good setup. I mean, the thought of diverse or the diversity of thought, um, to bring diversity of thought into the organization is
Mhm.
step one, and then there is the cultivation
Right.
of a culture that then uses that or leverages that
Right.
for better outcomes. And that's one of the, and I'll share one example of how we have leveraged that productively. Um, and we start off with a need to bring diversity of thought into decision making. And the example I'll share is, earlier in the year, we launched a new checking product. And in the design phase of that product, we had a diverse functions, a set of diverse functions come in for the design aspect. And I realized how well we executed that diversity of thought only when we were celebrating the launch of it, when one of the project managers shared with everybody that the first meeting that she went in, where she saw me and another EC executive committee member duking it out. We were like, just very openly expressing our opinions about what the product should be, and they were not. We were emotional. We were very behind our ideas, and that to me was just an example, and it was a reminder that at the end of the day, that was just one example during a design session where we were bringing in all different ideas. And sometimes some function would come in, say retail, the sales channel would come in and say, oh, that idea is just going to fall flat. That's never going to work. Um, but then if I look at it after all of that, the real result, the real outcome, the design is a lot more inclusive. It's a lot more powerful than it could have been otherwise. We sort of short circuited a lot of the learning that we would have done had we not done all this upfront. We would have launched something, then we would have had to evolve it more rapidly. Versus now, because we automatically included it in the decision making, that diversity of thought, I think we have a live example of a better product. And what that showed us is that we can benefit from making that systemic. And Sam, you used the word psychological safety. We've actually used psychological safety practices and training across the organization to then make it ubiquitous so that we all are talking about it openly. We all are aware of all of those things and dysfunctions openly. So we share that, and we openly then are making it a day-to-day kind of practice, made it into a systemic thing versus episodic.
I think
And
that also breaks down silos, right? When you have a diverse group of people from diverse departments, you start breaking out silos and saying, my department is more important, right? So, but also when you're trying to market to Gen Zs, don't you want Gen Zs to be in the room in decision making? Because I can't sit here and tell you
That,
at this age what it means to market what kind of product, what kind of messaging. So I think that diversity is also that. It's also being open-minded to someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't sound like you, who is not your age group, who doesn't have the same background. It just makes it so exciting, interesting, sometimes very uncomfortable. It's good. It's this is a very uncomfortable space for a lot of people, having sit down conversation with someone that doesn't sound like you or doesn't have the same background, right? In whether it's education or, and as we are hiring people that are not in the credit union industry, they come and challenge us. And it is great because they're bringing a different perspective. I like going to conferences that a lot of credit unions are not there because I learn more from a diverse group of people outside our industry and bring those ideas because I see, it's important to go to the league meetings, to the chapter meet. Those are all table stakes. But once or twice a year, I go to a conference that a lot of credit unions are not there because you hear so many great ideas. It's uncomfortable when I bring it sometimes, but that it just excites me to learn from other people that are not even in this industry, and being uncomfortable is a good place to be.
one of the things that we're talking about is building the muscle in this organization around debate, because we're so inclined to try to achieve consensus. So, Anand, when you talked about being in a meeting and passionately squaring off with your opposing views, the idea that we should build some muscle around debate and force ourselves to, okay, now you need to argue the other side of this. You came in the room convinced this was right, but can you argue the other side? And what perspective do we not have in the room? So one of the things that I really want to focus on is debate. And that sounds scary to some folks who are not used to disagreeing, right?
Yeah.
Healthy debate.
Healthy debate. Yes, we can make the best decision.
Might be, yes. I mean, that's the reason people hate me at times, because I never take no for an answer. I'm like, like, why? Yeah, always talk about the status. So yeah, so I mean, I'm wrapping up this roundtable with one question. Maybe let's start with Cathy. Cathy, like when future generations, right, talk about today's credit union leaders, what do you hope they'll say? That if there's just one thing that we got right, right? So what would that be? That's a difficult question, I know, but still, let's start from.
I hope that they'll say that we were embracing change and embracing the future and not holding on too tightly to the past. As it is, credit unions, just the phrase credit unions sounds so antiquated. And so I think there's a perception that we're behind the times, but we all know that we're not. But just the idea that we didn't hold on too tightly to the past and cling to it versus merging with where the industry is going, where consumer demand is going, where, you know, just even companies are going in terms of the type of culture you want to have for employees or internal members, that we weren't just stuck.
Perfect. Someone else wants to add something?
It's coincidental that the first question you asked me, I answered member centricity, and it turns out the first thought that comes to my mind here of what people should remember us in the future
Yeah.
is that we kept our focus on member needs. Technology evolves, member preferences evolve, but at the end of the day, after how many ever years of the Credit Union Act being enacted, through all of that, one thing that has remained constant, and I hope, and that's my expectation, that we would be seen as that we remained focused on member needs and continue to evolve, which nicely dovetails into what Cathy just said.
Perfect.
I think for me, I'll say if the future generation looks back and say, what have they done? I think I would like them to acknowledge the fact that we've seen a lot of change. We've seen a lot of different technologies come in, preferences being changed, and I would hope that they will see that given the scale of change, we still were true to who we are, which is we still kept the focus on the human connection. That after all, at the end of the day, we're all humans. And although we are trying to do our best to, move this overall business to more of a technology-centric business, at the center of it all, it is still about the human emotion, still about the connection with our members, with our employees, and that we tried our best to do that. We didn't lose focus of that. Yes, member centricity is good, and I think is important from a business standpoint, but having that core principle to kind of work around and build upon, it's so and even in the day and age of such technological advancements, we still held true, given AI trying to dive in and disrupt the overall industry in what we do from a financial services standpoint, we still stayed true to being human.
I'll say very similar to Sam and all of you is the culture that no matter how we continue growing, no matter what technology we use, that whether you walk into one branch, call, or we talk to each other, the culture doesn't change. I always say it's not just what you put on our website, it's how you feel. And I read something that always I remember. Culture is what your employees feel Sunday evening when they think about going to work on Monday morning. And
Yeah.
I've always said when I start coming and getting in my car and driving, that's when I stop working here, because if I don't feel good about coming here, that means the culture has changed. And I know we have truly stayed true to that culture, to both for our internal and external members. And I hope that's what we continue for many, many years to come.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you all, Anand, Hivi, Sam, Kathy. So this was amazing. Thank you for spending your time today with us this afternoon, talking about the actual future of leadership, because I also am very curious about how things are shaping. I actually have an intern who started working with me like 3 weeks back. I'm learning new things from her every single day. And I, actually meant to spend every at least 10 minutes with her every day. And believe me, it's been revolution that has happened to me, right? But again, thank you all for for spending your time with us today. We really appreciate, and have a great rest of the day. It's almost weekend. You should shut your laptops now. Maybe just take it a bit light.
Well,
I
thank you.
really
Thank
enjoyed
you,
getting to know
everyone.
you guys. Truly,
Thank
this was
you.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Good to see you
Take
Thank
all.
care.